Hello everyone. I see a couple of folks joining us, so I'm just going to give everyone about a minute to go ahead and get tuned in. And as we wait for everyone to arrive, I just wanted to welcome you all on this wonderful Wednesday evening. Just want to say thanks for joining us. We have an amazing panel lined up, so very excited for tonight's discussion. Okay, great. The number is still climbing, so always good to welcome everyone. I'll go ahead and get started. So welcome to our first week of events for USA Gap Year Fair's first ever virtual series. So this is our 6th event of the week. If you've joined us earlier or the session before this, welcome back. We will be spending the first couple of minutes with that same kind of intro information, and then we're going to go ahead and pass it on to some new panelists. So thank you again for joining us. And while we get settled, I'm going to go ahead and I just want to launch a poll to see who is in the room. Oh, actually, I'm not going to do that. Just kidding. Our poll is not set up tonight. So I hope you're joining us. If you're a student, a parent, educator, welcome all. And this will be very important information for everyone attending. So let's go ahead and tell you a little bit about me and Go Overseas. So I am Kelly Daniels. I'm the brand manager for Go Overseas, and I'm also an event coordinator for the USA Gap Year Fairs. And for the past 14 years, we've actually been partnering with schools across the country, and we've been promoting these events live in person. And we really aim to inspire and empower students to look beyond that four-walled classroom and pursue some experiential learning. So as we're adapting to these changing times, we've redesigned those in-person events to hopefully inspire and guide you guys tonight. And like I said, this event is hosted by Go Overseas. So you can think of us as like a Yelp for meaningful travel experiences. And although we don't operate any of our own programs, we are a great resource for planning those different types of trips. So we're talking about high school study abroad, intern, volunteer, work, teach, and also, of course, gap year opportunities. So you can browse our site and read program reviews right here. You can see resources such as articles, guides, scholarships, and I really hope you're inspired today to take that leap and start planning your gap time. And this is a great resource and a great place to start. Another fun fact, important fact, is we are also a resource for scholarships. And so everyone always wants to know about scholarship information. We are going to be announcing over $15,000 in gap year scholarships this next year. So we'll be opening applications in February to kick off Gap Year Exploration Month. So if you'd like to receive those updates, I'm just going to go ahead and drop a link in the chat for you guys to check out and go ahead and subscribe to those scholarship updates coming your way. Okay, so let's move on for tonight's last session. We're going to be talking about gap year sustainability projects and programs and social justice projects and programs. And we have an amazing panel lined up for you. We'll start with Julia Rogers from EnRoute Consulting, and then we're going to hear from Eva at Where There Be Dragons, James from Carpe, Rebecca at EF Gap Year, and Krista at Amigos. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please drop them in that Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and hopefully we'll have some time for the Q&A session at the end. Okay, so enough talking from me. Let's go ahead and pass this over to Julia to get us started and kick us off. Thanks so much, Julia.
Thank you so much, Kelly. You're always such a great master of ceremonies. So thank you so much. And it's great to see everybody here tonight. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. My name is Julia Rogers, and I'm a gap year counselor. So basically that means that it is my job to help students coordinate their gap year plans. And it is a job that I absolutely love. I'm a gap year alum myself. I actually took a gap year right after college to Tanzania, and I spent almost a year doing public health outreach. So the idea of social justice and sustainability as your gap year is very near and dear to my heart. My time in Tanzania was so formative that it's why I do what I do now, because I had such an incredible, challenging, and life-altering experience there. But also one of the things that I discovered when I was on my gap year after college was that if I had taken my gap year before college, it would have completely changed what I had done in college. So I would have studied something different. I may have even gone to a different school. So that's why I feel really strongly about students taking gap time at these formative ages before, during, while you're in these like decision-making periods of time. Although there's never a wrong time to take a gap year. So I've been working with students crafting personalized gap year plans for about 12 years now. And again, it's just such a blast. I get to visit students all over the world at site visits in normal times. And this year, I'm kind of hunkered down and helping students plan COVID gap years, which are surprisingly diverse. In fact, you'll probably hear that from our future panelists, is that there are some incredible adventures to be had, even in the context of COVID. But I do want to, start by talking a little bit about the benefits of a gap year. A lot of you probably already have an understanding of what a gap year is, and Jessica, you can advance to the next slide if you'd like. But I like to define a gap year as a structured period of personal growth aided by activities of enrichment. And it's really a time where you're delving into your personal, practical, and professional development. And when you actually take this intentional time to focus on how you want to engage with the world and who you want to be as an adult, there are these incredible benefits to your life and career. We're missing one of those little numbers, but I'll get to it in a second. But 88% of students self-report that their gap year added to their employability. 98% of students say that their gap year helped them develop their sense of self. And 60% of students say that their gap year helped them set them on their path for college major or career. And I think that, for students who are gravitating towards social justice, sustainability, and any kind of activism as part of their gap year, developing your sense of self and where you fall in your role in positive change is so important. And I think that a gap year can really give you that information about how you want to make good change in the world. And I came across a really interesting, framework for thinking about social change recently, and I thought that it was such a great way of displaying the different ways that you can participate in social change. So the next slide here talks about one's role in the social change ecosystem. A lot of people think that if you're engaged in sustainability or social change or social justice work, you're out there holding a sign at a protest, and that's how, that's the way that you can be an activist. And I think that a more nuanced approach understands that there's so many different roles to play in contributing to the betterment of our world, of the people in it, and of positive change. So I won't go into all these things because we could spend an entire 45-minute session just talking about the ways that you can tap into these different types of routes. But I think that it's really great to understand and to kind of put a label on the fact that there's all these different ways of partaking in this work. And really what a gap year is the opportunity to kind of understand and discover maybe your role in this current climate that we're in, and how you want to, again, affect that change. So the slide that I want to spend the most time on is actually the next one, where we talk a little bit about different types of gap year opportunities. Tonight, you're going to hear from gap year programs, and they'll do a great job kind of helping you understand how you can exercise and flex those change muscles on your gap time. But there are other types of opportunities where you can plug into this type of work, and I want to make sure I touch on them. So for a lot of people who are interested in sustainability and justice work, volunteering is a natural place to consider, and there are many, many programs and opportunities, both domestically and internationally, where you can work on any number of opportunities, whether it's working with climate scientists and collecting data to contribute to our reserves on understanding more about climate change. It could be working with students and people and community development projects. It could be working in other types of environmental work. So there's lots of different ways that you can try that out. And that volunteering is actually a wonderful way of trying out potential career paths, especially for students who have maybe a little bit of understanding of what they might want to do, but haven't quite figured it out yet. Experiential programs are these cohort-based programs where you're actually going to be able to, I like to call them a tasting platter of different experiences. And these kinds of opportunities are really good if a student kind of knows thematically that they want to engage in sustainability or justice work, but doesn't know exactly what lane that they want to be in. Interning is similar to volunteering, although it's a little bit more career focused, obviously. So you might be working with an organization or on a fellowship underneath a nonprofit, or perhaps a government organization that's working towards an issue that you care about. Working is a natural component of a gap time. It may fall into this work that you're interested in doing, or it may be a way of funding other types of opportunities that you want to engage in on your gap year. we actually see most students contributing towards their gap year in some way, whether that's working and self-funding their entire gap year or working for different parts of it to kind of save money and contribute in different ways to their gap time. Now, enrichment courses are a great way to practice self-care during your year. I think that a lot of us know if you're engaged in any kind of social justice or environmental justice work, burnout is a real thing. And learning how to balance your passion for change with taking care of yourself will help you run this marathon and not sprint it. And so enrichment courses, and to a certain extent, a lot of these other opportunities can help exercise maybe a different part of you, that you're really passionate about climate change, but you also really want to learn how to surf on your gap year or something like that. So you can actually find all sorts of different opportunities in different countries, in our own country, that would allow you to learn a certain skill or practice a hobby, dive deeper into a current interest or something like that. And then, travel, and by travel, I just mean any kind of opportunity where you're not with a program, but you're kind of moving away from home in some way that's unstructured. So a road trip could be travel, backpacking through Europe, hiking, doing a through hike of a long trail somewhere in the States. All those things kind of are in that independent bucket. Now, one thing that doesn't kind of have an icon to it are these self-designed gap years. And I think that's a really important thing to touch on as well. Most students do multiple things over the course of their gap year, because most gap years are actually from whenever you graduate, high school, or whenever your gap time starts, through till the start of the next thing, whether that's college, whether that's career, military, vocational school, community college, whatever that next thing is. It could be a few months, or it could be more than a year of time that you have to fill. So think about filling it with different things. Maybe you're doing some volunteering, maybe you're doing an experiential semester, and then maybe you're self-designing something that's of your own making. I've had students who've started their own nonprofits. I've had students who've worked on elections and campaign work, especially this past year. There's any way that you want to plug in that isn't through a formal program is not a wrong way to spend a gap year. In fact, it can be the most personalized way of spending your gap time. So thinking about a gap year as a recipe that you can kind of build yourself is a useful way of thinking about it. So there's really no wrong way of taking a gap year, as long as it's based in authentically with your own goals and your budget, and really what you want to get out of it and what you want to learn about yourself. So I've just taken up a little bit of time giving you some foundational knowledge about how to think about a gap year in the context of social change and sustainability work, but I want to throw it to one of our first programs who's going to talk to you a little bit about what a gap year can actually look like, and that's Eva from Where There Be Dragons.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you all. My name's Eva Vanek. I'm the admissions director at Where There Be Dragons. And as an overall kind of intro to our programs, we run immersive and responsible travel courses in Asia, Latin America, Africa, and actually now the USA, which has been new this year. We've been operating and running programs for 30 years, and our 3-month gap year programs start in September and then also February. And then in terms of goals and sort of our macro hopes for our programs, Dragons really does 2 things. We run programs that are really focused on place and push students to dive in a very honest, meaningful way to the areas where they go. As kind of a second macro goal, our programs are also really focused on our students and their own personal self-growth. Next slide, please. So there's a lot that makes Dragons unique, and I could probably have 5 slides for this, but our programs are small groups, so there are 12 students and 3 instructors, and that's intentional so that we can provide a high level of mentorship for our students. They're also really holistic, and so each day is really different, and they contain 9 program components, which consist of homestays, language, trekking, rugged travel, so on, and so on program, students kind of get, like Julia said, a sampling platter of a lot of different activities. Our programs are custom crafted and one of a kind. And so with Dragons, we never run the same program twice. Each program is unique and brand new. And the reason we can do that is because our instructors are experts in the places where they take students. And they design and create their programs based on their experience and work and life traveling where they take you. And as a group of 3 instructors, they generally have about 5 to 15 years working and traveling where they go. So definitely impressive and expert folk. We say our programs are unfiltered. And what that means is we're not, sitting on fancy buses on our programs or kind of doing touristic activities. Our programs are really intended to go deep within the places where we go, and they're unfiltered. So you get to experience a place in all of its beautiful, complex, and interesting realities. And then we also follow an ethic of responsible travel, which I'll speak to on the next slide. So with Dragons, we're definitely a value-based company. And again, I could add tons more points to what we have listed here. And our work in responsible travel is an ongoing process that we started 30 years ago, and we're still learning every day. But we really let our values drive our actions. And so with our programs, we really hope that our places speak for themselves. And so we're not traveling with any agenda. We're coming to locations to listen and learn from the people and places where we go. We're also a small organization, so we run a limited number of programs. And that's intentional in that we want to have a light impact on the places we travel. And that's also done by group size. Dragons is a B Corp organization. We also work with around 30% financial aid students each year and really try hard to increase the access to our programs. We have a JEDI committee, which is focused on equity and inclusivity. And that committee helps all branches of our work, programs, administration, so on, to ensure that we're placing a high value on equity and inclusivity and learning and including those more and more every day. We also follow an ethic of learning service, which is different than a lot of other organizations in that we really push students to learn how to do service well so that their impact doesn't have a negative imprint on the communities we travel. We also offer carbon offsets, which isn't the be-all end-all, but definitely is a step towards being more environmentally sustainable in terms of our travel. And finally, we have an educational curriculum that focuses on tons of things, but not limited to climate change, social justice, and human rights. Last slide, please. And so before you go, students often ask, like, am I up for this? Is this like a little intense? But if any of this resonates with you, you don't have to have any experience or background to join a Dragons program. If the whole idea of traveling really deeply and safely in the areas where we go sounds exciting, then our programs are likely for you. And they're definitely fun. And so, yeah, if you're interested, we have an online application. We do a phone interview, and that's about it. Anyway, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me anytime. Again, my name's Eva Vanek, and I'm passing the baton.
Hi, everyone. This is James Simmons with Carpe Diem Education, and glad to be here tonight. And Kelly and Jessica, thank you for hosting this. I think that social justice and environmental justice are such tremendous topics at hand right now. And so I'm really grateful to be here and be a part of this. And actually, I like to think that social and environmental justice are one, they are merging, regardless of race, class, or even species. Every being has a right to clean air, water, and land. And our environment is the foundation for all social structures. So grateful to be here. We are Carpe Diem Education. We're based in Portland, Oregon, and we offer innovative and thematic gap year programs. So we really try to go into regions of the world and speak and learn directly to what is happening there. So an example might be Morocco and Spain, where the focus is human migration and Arabic. Northern Africa is experiencing a huge migration from Central and South Africa into Morocco as folks attempt to make it to the European continent. So that's a very alive theme specific to that region. India is facing huge challenges with climate change. And so we look into climate change in India specifically. The South Pacific are leaders, New Zealand are leaders in environmental conservation and outdoor leadership opportunities. So each of our programs has an emphasis on relating to the best of our ability to the themes and the topics at hand in those regions. We do place a large emphasis on community and positive group dynamics, leadership, and personal growth. We have a collaborative problem-solving system that we introduce to students as a means to establish greater interpersonal skills and interpersonal effectiveness. We love adventure, and we allow the students to lead a student-directed travel near the end of the program that is all logistics and all budgeting and all outcomes are their responsibility. We call that student-directed travel. And we really work with leadership in terms of having leaders during the week. So we have 2 student leaders throughout the week that work directly with the overseas educators, the group leaders, to support those students in gaining greater leadership, greater logistics, and greater awareness opportunities for them. We are a certified B Corps organization. I'd encourage folks to look that up if you're not familiar, but it basically means that we meet or exceed standards related to social and environmental practices. And we upkeep that every, I believe, 2 years. And we do offer Carpe Diem lessons as well that cover topics from, as you can see, positive psychology to global economics. We're always looking to contextualize the experience for our students to really bring an immersive quality to the program. And we do travel in 16 countries and are on 6 continents at this point in time. Next slide, please. Yes, how do we travel sustainably? It's a big challenge, and I think Eva did a great job in saying that nothing is perfect. So we do provide opportunities for carbon offsetting. We also know that that is not a complete way to manage our carbon footprint. So we're always looking for ways to improve that. We do have our students actually do some tree planting on program so they can feel connected to their impact and connected to a means to attempt to offset their impact. And again, tree planting is one of many things that needs to happen in terms of carbon offsetting. We encourage folks to travel light. We encourage our students to go to the secondhand gear store or even borrow gear. It's important to know that they have options other than just consuming. Our itineraries reflect environmental conservation and sustainability throughout the regions that we travel. And we certainly encourage students to support local and reduce their consumption. Who you partner with is a huge aspect of international education, and we vet our partners extremely well to make sure that they have the local communities and the local environment's best interests in mind. Next slide, please. And how do we promote social justice? Again, always work to be done here. So we do have a nonprofit, Carpe Mundi, and we have scholarshiped over 100 students from Portland, first-generation college students on our programs, and we're really proud of that. We discuss these topics throughout student orientation and contextualize those in country as they are expressed in the regions that we travel. We do offer scholarships. I encourage you to check out our web pages for that. And we really promote partnerships, again, with local organizations that have the best interests of the community in mind. I could go on, and I need to pass at this point in time, so I'll pass it on over to Rebecca.
Thanks, James. And it's really great to be here with all of you, with such great panelists. I'm Rebecca. I'm the manager of institutional relations at EF Gap Year. I'm a Gap Year alum myself, and I'm really excited to be here both representing our programs, but also because these are really important topics to me personally and something that I'm involved in every aspect of my life. And it's really great to be able to talk through it with you all. Thinking about our program, our EF Gap Year programs, our primary goal is really to catalyze students for both global and local change. So what does this mean? This really means that our focus is both what you're actually doing on your gap year and kind of as Julia said at the beginning, you know, the impact that you're going to be having throughout the rest of your life. So the lasting impact, skills, mindset shifts that will impact you in college, in your career, and in your communities. Just to give you a little background of who we are at EF, we are a global leader in education. Now it's been over 55 years, I think, with programs in more than 100 countries and 6 different continents. And our mission is opening the world through education. And I always come back to this because I think this is even more important now than ever as we see the crises that our world is facing, and we recognize the need to really work together as a global community to solve these problems that we all face today. And really at the heart of our GAP programs are these 4 key components of our educational philosophy. So having a growth mindset, gaining global skills, having that awareness and empathy component, as well as that life readiness component, which really comes back to, figuring out how you want to be a change maker in the world. All of these come together to really form the core of all of our programs. Next slide, please. So we see the commitment to sustainable development, to social justice, as really being an inextricable part of our programs. This year has, for many of us, in our personal lives and our professional lives, been a moment of reckoning. And I'm really proud of what we're doing at EF. I'm part of our EF-wide diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging team, which continues to push us farther each day towards our commitments to anti-racism work and building a sustainable future across the globe. Thinking about how this manifests itself in our programs really are committed to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And this idea of sustainability we see as being, of course, about the environment, but also about sustainable societies, sustainable economies. And we really take that holistic view in our programs, which includes with our partnerships, including with the World Animal Protection, with our work with the Olympics, as well as the Holt Prize, which we give out each year to change makers across the globe. When we think about environmental impact, this is a part of the curriculum for all of our programs, both calculating and unpacking what it means as we embark on programs that take us to different parts of the world, as well as actually is incorporated in some of the activities that students do on programs, working in mangrove reforestation and projects like that. Ultimately, I want to come back to the idea that, sorry, back one more, just for a second. Just come back to the idea that we really want students to serve as this hyper conduit, this program to serve as a hyper conduit to activating students as agents of global change, to really figuring it out what it is that you want to do to make the world a better place. And in terms of how we can do that, we have a diversity and equity scholarship in addition to other scholarship funding. And we have a great alumni network that students have access to as they take their GAP experience forward. Next slide, please. So what does this look like on programs? So all of our programs include one or more of these custom modules for our full 25-week-long GAP year program. Actually, all of these custom modules are part of the program. And as Julia mentioned at the beginning, we're all trying to find ways to make our impact in the world. And this is a great way to really have a test run at a few different types of experience. So in your language study module, for example, you're really immersed in a culture and a language, have those intense moments of cross-cultural communication. I see that I have a 1 minute left, so I'll run through this quickly. Service learning is one that I think has a really clear link back to sustainability and social justice. All of our service learning projects are really focused on the UN's SDGs in locations from Tanzania to Thailand. And the internship, I think, is a great moment for you to really practice using those skills in a real life situation at an organization or a company where you can really use those skills. Next slide, please. And just to think about what those look like in action, perhaps your GAP year might have you studying Spanish in Costa Rica and also exploring Costa Rica's unique approach to ecotourism. You might be with your service learning cohort in Thailand, working on an elephant reintegration project, a rural economic development project, or with youth in a local after school program. And finally, you might intern, for example, in Sevilla, Spain, with an organization that designs these really amazing walkable solar pavements. So you're really getting an inside look at some of the ways that technology is being used to solve our problems. So a lot of great options there. This is just one itinerary. We also have some short-term programs that focus specifically on sustainable development, including one happening this summer in Costa Rica. So lots of great options to really help find what it is that you want to be doing to solve the global issues that you care about.
Hello, hi, my name is Krista. I'm here representing Amigos, and it's a joy to be in this conversation with so many people that I really appreciate and respect in the field. I come to Amigos with a unique perspective. We have been around for a very long time, since 1965, and I actually did our programs for 4 summers myself when I was in high school and college. And I'm in the unique position of also having my children have gone through our high school programs, and I have a senior who's looking at gap programming right now. So I am deep in this, both professionally and personally. So I really learn constantly from this group of people and from the conversations that come forth. So I wanted to speak a little bit about my organization. We've been around since 1965, and unlike pretty much everyone else who's spoken before, one of the ways that we really feel we have an impact and that we're committed to sustainability is we really are committed to a region and to communities and partnerships that we've built for the last 55 years. So Amigos is not all over the world. Amigos is in Latin America because that's where we've been building relationships. And we find it's in relationships where there is the definition and the lived experience of sustainability. So, one thing that's really beautiful about us is that we've built relationships in countries for 50 to 55 years. So when we go to Costa Rica, we've been going there for 35 years. We've been in Ecuador for almost 50 years. And that's really how you are able to commit to sustainability, because year after year, relationships continue to build and impact continues to build. So it's something that's pretty amazing for me that my kids are actually going through an experience that I went through many, many years ago, and that I feel like confident we're going to be able to offer young people to continue in the years ahead. So one thing that's different in Amigos than when I went was now we have programs for GAP, and we have middle and high school summer. And there was a question that came up about the COVID shift. So I'm really going to focus less on what we would do in a normal year and more about really how COVID has created remarkable disruption, but also remarkable opportunities for us organizationally to bring our pillars into new ways and to new opportunities. So I'm just going to dive into the next slide and talk a little bit about what those pillars are. So the pillars of Amigos are really everything we do. We always go forward and we ask ourselves, are we building on these pillars of leadership for youth, of service, and really about cultural humility, which is, I think, the thing that is the most exciting thing for me as a parent, is that we're really committed to young people, helping them find out how they can add value to the communities that are already coming up to solutions to climate change, to environmental challenges, to social justice issues. There's an enormous learning process in Amigos as we ask questions. In fact, in our normal summer program, if we were going to be in a normal year, it would be typically a 6-week program where for the first 2 weeks, volunteers would live maybe only 2 in a small rural village and spend the first 2 weeks not doing anything, but asking questions and learning about that community, so that they would build a project that would be a community-based initiative, something that the community owned. And so what's so interesting about that is, how do you take that now into a COVID reality? So we looked at moving our programs to COVID, and we were always concerned with the idea of sustainability, and especially around environment and social justice. So the COVID pivot was exciting for us because we've always wanted to do programs in a different way. And when this was an opportunity for us to do that differently. And I'm going to give you an example, really 3 examples of how we're taking our values and our program pillars into new program models for the spring gap. So I'm going to move pretty quickly through these because I know we're going to be short on time and we want lots of space for questions. So let's just go to the next slide, and we'll talk about what does COVID social justice look like at Amigos right now. And we've been delighted to partner with Tufts University and actually be able to offer an internship for social change course taught by Tufts University faculty. Now, this includes a racial equity and justice education workshops, one-on-one career mentorship, volunteer placement in social justice organizations, both in Latin America and in the United States. So it's actually possible in this program to do a volunteership in a Latin American organization and be of value to them, even when in a time when we can't travel there. One thing that we're really excited about is we really believe in language and language learning, and the dislocation that happens for young people when they're put in a situation where they need to learn a language and go through that struggle and that process. What we've been really blown away with as we created an online virtual program was we wondered if this community, whether this universe that was being created of young people coming together, would be able to be a rich, real world. And it's pretty exciting to talk with these young people in real time, and the bonds that they're making are real. And I think that's really important for all of you who are looking at GAP programs for the future, is that it's a time where you get to find your people. And I think it's probably never been more important for young people to find their people, to find people that share their values, that share their beliefs, that share their desires for action. And one of the things that we're so excited about with the Civic Action Program is these young people are finding themselves. And the other thing, just to give a little shout out about virtual programming, is what we found is that we were able to not just bring youth from the United States into this program, we were able to bring in youth from Latin America. And there are truly remarkable young leaders all throughout Latin America that are cause for inspiration and ideation. So they're a part of this program as well. And it's a way of creating a rich, real world of social change, of engagement, of language learning, of cross-cultural connection in a virtual space. Now, we would never have done this if it hadn't been for the COVID pivot. But we've been loving it, and we've been learning so much about how we can continue to build this out, because a huge part of what we want to do is make sure we can keep young people safe and the communities that welcome us safe as we go into in-person programming, which brings me to the next slide. We are going to be doing in-person programming, and we do it very thoughtfully and very carefully as we do this. We're going to be taking a pod, and I feel like pod is going to be one of the words of 2020, a pod of 12 to 20 students from the United States and from Costa Rica to live in a women's-led collective nature reserve, where they're going to be working on climate change adaptations happening right now in Costa Rica. This is a hands-on project where the work that's already being done in Costa Rica is what we're coming in to support. We never believe in dropping into a community, coming in with an idea for 4 or 5 or 6 weeks and leaving, because there's no sustainability in that model. But we're so excited by what we're seeing in this idea of bringing a small group of people dedicated to coming and supporting the work that's already being done by leadership in Costa Rica. Again, we feel like we're going to be able to offer that sense for young people to find their people, but also address something that we've been noticing in our work with young people the last 8 months, is their isolation and their social isolation, and their sense that in a normal situation, they'd be around a lot of different kinds of adults. They'd be around coaches and teachers assistants, big sisters, all kinds, a rich world of for young people, and that's missing. So whenever we build our programs now, we're being very specifically building in lots of diverse kinds of mentorship so that people feel supported. And this all goes back to sustainability. Sustainability happens when you go into a community that you know and you care about, and that there's trust, and you continue to build on that trust. So the work that is done there is something that continues on and has collective ownership around this. So this is what we're really excited about in Costa Rica, and we feel like we're living our values of sustainability in that model. And because we're gaining confidence in this pod model and what we're learning, we've decided to do something we've never done in Amigos, which is to have a domestic in-person US program. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see that we're heading to Colorado, a same thing in a pod program. And this time we're looking at sustainability and conservationism here in the West in Colorado. What makes this different from a lot of other programs is that we're not going to be doing backpacking or backcountry. That's not our expertise. What we know how to do is to do a process of inquiry and service in the places where we go, and to bring curiosity and a desire to understand the kinds of collaborations and partnerships needed in order to do the protections that are important for conservation. So this is a really interesting kind of restless program. I love it because it's going to be on the move a lot. But in every place we go, there's going to be deep acts of service in the organizations that we work with and partner with, and a lot of working with local leaders to find out how is the interplay between conservationists and business and ranches and government. These are deep levels of cooperation in order to make good things happen. And we want young people to be kind of on the ground level of seeing what that's like and reflecting on what they're learning. So that's what sustainability looks like in our program model. And it's what it looks like as we pivot in the COVID times. We're very much looking forward to going back to being able to be in Latin America in deep partnership in rural communities. But for right now, our commitment is safety, both for those communities and for our families and our youth here. So these are the kinds of program models that we've come up with that we feel great about moving forward. And then we just wanted to have a final word on our commitment to access and equity. So if we go to the next slide, I'll just finish up here with your patience. Reflection questions that we ask all throughout our programming is, how do I show up for myself and my community in these times? What have I learned? And what skills can I develop for a meaningful impact in the world? These are the questions that we bring forward to young people. And for all of us who work for young people, I think that we are always blown away by how these questions are answered. I know that I myself am inspired every day when I go to work. When I read the news, I can get anxious, but when I work with young people and I see how they're answering these questions for themselves and their community, it's truly remarkable. So it's just it's a great program. It's exciting to be with all these organizations who are also doing wonderful work. But yeah, that's what we're doing in Amigos. And I think the next slide is the one that talks a little bit about our commitment to equity. Oh, no, we're not. We're done. I'm going to stop talking now. Make room for questions.
Thanks, Krista. And actually, yes, we are here just about ready to wrap up. We've got about 4 or 5 minutes left, and we do have one question in the Q&A. And Krista actually just answered that for her program. The question is, how have your programs changed due to COVID-19? And I know that several of you kind of mentioned COVID, but if you wanted to speak directly, maybe give us a line or two about what has changed. Thank you, Krista, for kind of already getting there. So Julia, do you want to touch base and then maybe start with your perspective, and then we'll run down the line?
Sure, yeah, and I just typed a bit of a encyclopedia answer into the chat window as well. But one of the things that I'm observing about the gap year industry in the moment of COVID is that the industry has really banded together and created there's just so much collaboration in response to this moment. As an industry, we meet weekly, and that's as counselors and program operators, to talk about contingency planning and risk assessment and what the best practices are for running these programs, whether they're online or in the field. So we have collected and gathered a lot of intel from the running programs in the summer and fall of 2020 that is then being, again, we're always learning and bettering for the future. So programs have shifted and changed quite a bit, obviously, in response to COVID. But one of the things that I think is really, really cool about gap year programs is that they are uniquely positioned to be able to run in a safer way during the era of COVID than many other, opportunities that young people are given, as in college or university environments where they're with thousands and thousands of other people potentially. You compare that to any number of these programs where the cohort is a dozen students or sometimes less, and the ability to test and create safe bubbles and pods is just so much higher. So I'd love to hear from the other programs as well, because everybody has their own specific policies, but I think that it is heartening to know that each program is creating very, very thoughtful policies to keep students safe in the field.
Yeah, maybe if we could rapid fire from each of you guys. Eva, you want to start?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the quick answer is that we're now running domestic programs for the first time, so in Colorado and on the Rio Grande, and we plan to keep running those. We had to unfortunately cancel our fall programs this season, but we're gearing up for next year, and another big change is just keeping everything super flexible for families. So all deposits are fully refundable through March 1st at this point, and yeah, we're getting excited for next year.
Cool. I think that Julia really wrapped it up well in terms of her synopsis of what most programs are doing. I think this is almost universal, kind of what's written here. I think a big piece to relate to social justice right now is, where do we choose to travel? So we are a privileged society, and we can have feelings of entitlement and privilege about wanting to travel someplace that we may not should be traveling, or going to trying to go to many places to where contact tracing gets very complex, if not impossible. So I would look for programs having smaller itineraries in terms of regions and areas covered. Our domestic program this fall went to 2 counties in Arizona, studying borderlands issues on the US-Mexico border, and just really looking at programs more than likely not going into countries that are underserved medically, or who may be looking at second and third waves that are going to tax their medical systems.
Yeah, just to add quickly, agree with what everyone else said. Student and community health and safety are our primary concerns. And we've also extended our cancellation policies. We know flexibility is really important for families right now. So just making sure that everyone has enough time to consider options. And then of course, on the ground, just taking a lot of different safety protocols and putting everything in place with the idea that things will change as the world changes around us.
Awesome. Thank you guys for chiming in. And I know we're a little over time here, so if you have to drop off, I understand. But this last question came in from Carmen just a minute ago. I want to make sure at least somebody gets to address it. For everyone, how do you address mental health crises that might arise while students are engaged in their gap year experience? Are there any specific supports you just want to mention that you can provide?
I'll go. We actually have just a mental health first aid that we train all of our leaders in, and that we also keep a mental health specialist on retainer that our students can contact at any point. We also go out of our way to arrange meetings between a student and their therapist or mental health specialist at home. So we certainly do as much as we can to support students. We also try to really promote a sense of informing them as to what they're getting involved with. So our interview process really tries to tease out what maybe mental health issues may arise, and actually asking students proactively, do you have tools? Do you have strategies as a means to work through some of these issues? Do you know how to ask for help, et cetera? So really keying in on the individual and understanding how to best support them.
Awesome. Thank you, James. I think that is a good way to end our Q&A. I really appreciate you guys sticking out the last couple minutes with us. And just want to say thank you to the panelists. And I have just a last slide for everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Great discussion. Again, wonderful questions, everyone. Just want to let you know that this is their contact information. So the panelists who joined us tonight, feel free to screenshot this, touch base with them afterwards, reach out. I'm sure they'd love to hear from you. And moving on, our resources here, we have a list of resources which you can also use to further that gap research. And we recommend you do visit Go Overseas. You can browse those articles I mentioned, explore programs, and sign up for those scholarship updates. And last but not least, we have a few more sessions left for our gap week this week. So please feel free to join us. You can visit us at gooverseas.com and find more information. I'm also just going to go ahead and drop the registration link for the rest of these events in the chat. And with that, I will say good night. Thank you all. Panelists, thank you. Much appreciated. And I hope everyone has a great night and happy gap year planning.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, y'all. Good
Bye,
job,
guys.
everyone.